Hello, I'm Michaela. I'm here at the Nelson Community Food Center and we are going to be cooking butternut squash gnocchi today for our third Kids Club meal kit instructional video distancing cooking class. So to start off, you've all been provided with a container of butternut squash puree. This is beautiful butternut squash that was roasted here at the food center, and I had some awesome volunteers help me. It came from a beautiful local garden and it's going to be delicious. So we're going to scoop that into a bowl. You want a pretty big bowl, and we're going to be mixing our flour in next. So for making a pasta dough or a gnocchi dough, you're going to be wanting to do about a cup at a time. So we're going to sprinkle a little bit of that in there. And for those of you who don't know what gnocchi is, it's sort of like a potato dumpling. So traditionally it's made with potato, and today we're making it with the squash and flour. And just like pasta, it cooks in boiling water, and it's delicious. It's sort of that comfort food that's perfect for this time of year, and I love gnocchi. You can buy it at the grocery store, and most people don't make it at home, but it's not that hard to make, and it's sort of a fun little thing to try. So if you look in my bowl here, it's kind of funny. I picked a bit of a weird bowl because it's basically the same color as the squash that I'm doing. But if you look, I'm starting to get that all nicely mixed together. And I'm going to go in with another cup of flour here. And into the dough, we're also going to be adding some whisked eggs as well as some Parmesan cheese. So I'm going to mix in my next cup of flour, and then we're going to add the eggs in. Alright, okay, so we're getting somewhere with this again. And this is a good workout. If you haven't been going to your gym class, then you can just stay home and make some gnocchi, and that'll get you all worked out. Okay, so we've got the eggs in there, and we're gonna go in with our 1/4 cup of parm. So in your bags, you guys got more than a 1/4 cup of parm to be grated. You got it in a little block, and you're gonna be grating that yourself. You want to use a 1/4 cup of what I've given you in the dough, and then you're going to save a little bit, and the leftover is going to be grated into our delicious sauce. So this is getting nice and mixed in here. And we're also going to want to season the gnocchi. So when you're cooking, it's really important to season at every step and season everything that you cook kind of separately, and then it'll come together. So by seasoning, I mean basically just salting. So got a little bowl of salt here. I'm going to do a nice pinch of salt. So with pasta, we season our sauce with salt, we season the water with salt, and we season the pasta dough itself with salt. You don't want to over salt because that's not too yummy at all. But when you salt things the right amount, it really just helps the flavors shine of what you're cooking. So you're going to be able to taste that squash better. You'll be able to taste all of the different parts of the dish better. So here I'm going to be adding more flour, about another cup. And we'll fold that in here. Oh yeah, this is pretty fun. It's sort of like making cookie dough, except for that it's bright orange. I have made orange cookies actually, but not too many times. They're not the most typical cookies. Okay. So it's kind of coming together like that. And so in this recipe, they say when the batter, the dough kind of starts coming off of the bowl naturally like this, like it's formed its own little shape here, that it's time to dump it out onto the counter. So I'm going to put this here for a second, and I'm going to very heavily flour my countertop. So you might want to be wearing an apron for this part, and be warned, there will be a small mess of flour in your kitchen after this experience, but it'll be well worth it, I promise, because it's going to be delicious. So I like to flour anything that's covered in dough my hand. The spatula, I like to add a little extra flour, and then it helps me just get it off there more easily. So if you ever have like dough stuck in your bowl or something and you want to get a little bit of it out, I add extra flour and then I scrape it with my fingers. So this part is going to be a little sticky, so we want to keep our flour nearby, and we want to make sure our hands are floured. And you can look here, I'm dumping flour on this baby. Okay. And now I'm going to start the process that is called kneading. So you knead dough when you make bread, when you make pasta, all kinds of things. And it just sort of brings the dough together, solidifies it. So you can knead all different kinds of ways, and you want to keep adding flour as you go. So some people punch when they knead like this. I like to fold and then use the butt of my hand and push down. So I flatten the kind of mixture out, fold it again, push it down, and kind of turn it. And it will become very natural one day. It might take a little while. I made bread every day. I made 4 loaves of bread every day for a job that I had for months, and it took a couple weeks, and then I was just a kneading pro. Here we go. So we're getting this really, really beautiful yellow dough. Look at that. Oh, it's gonna be delicious. And it's really not too messy, like you don't have too many bits of dough stuck on the counter here. We still have a pile of flour, but that's okay because we're gonna keep using it. And sprinkle a little more. I think we're almost there. We don't want to add too much flour to, really any dough, because when you add too much flour, we become dense and heavy. It'll be difficult to work with, and it will not be as delicious. So, here we go. I am going to say that this is basically done. We've got this nice little round guy, and you can look there, like it's pretty pokeable. It's not too dense. I'd say that that's pretty perfect. So I'm going to slice off a chunk of this. And, well, first I sliced it in half just to make my life a little bit easier. And I'll just put this aside for a second. And we're gonna do that again. I'm just gonna try using 1/4 of my dough to start. All right, so really flour this, and now we are going to be making kind of a rope or a snake of dough that then we are going to shape into our gnocchis. So gnocchi, I was trying to look up, what does gnocchi even mean? It's a funny word. It's got a G at the beginning of it, which is unusual in English, but I guess that's a sound that's common in other languages, in Italian, and that G, you don't really say the G. Kind of like the word gnome, and using your tongue at the roof of your mouth when you say it a little bit. And apparently there's kind of different stories around the word gnocchi. So I think there's another word like gnocco or something like that, and that means knot of wood. So it's like a little circle in a slab of wood, and it kind of represents that, I guess. And then the other one is, there's another word in Italian that sounds a lot like gnocchi, which means knuckle, which I think that one makes the most sense to me because it sort of looks almost like a knuckle when we finish making it. So here we go. We've got a nice blob rope. It's all floured on my counter here, and I am going to cut these little cute dumplings out of this. So kind of look like a little pillow. It's about the size of a grape. And I'll just keep going. And I'm always doing my sort of finger guard position when I'm using my knife. This is something you could totally use. You could really use scissors if you wanted to, or you could use a butter knife, whatever works for you. Now I'm going to show you how you can shape your gnocchi. So there's lots of different ways you can do this. You could just cook them just like this if you didn't feel like doing anything else. Some people put a little thumbprint or fingerprint into the gnocchi, and these little shapes that we're adding to it are there to catch sauce. So if you wanted to use like a pesto or something, it would, once you've cooked the gnocchi and then you toss it in the sauce, it's going to catch the little bits of sauce and it'll be really delicious. Another way that we could shape our gnocchi is with these little grooves. And there's some traditional tools to make this happen, but a fork works perfectly. So I'm rolling it along the fork, and there we have some little grooves. I don't know how well you can see those. It's not perfect, it never is, but it's pretty fun. So I've got some little guys. So this is kind of the first part of this recipe, is making our little dumplings. And so I'm going to finish shaping these up, and you guys should do the same, and I'm going to be back in just a minute and show you what the next step is. Hi guys, so I'm back. I've got some gnocchis ready here. So we're going to put these into some boiling water soon and cook them, but quickly I'm going to show you how to make a really simple sauce. So I'm going to start by crushing a clove of garlic. So I use the flat side of my knife, pop that against the clove of garlic, and I use my hand to push down. So you can do it this way. I think I've shown you before. You can also take the clove of garlic and put it under your cutting board and then put all your weight down on it. And both ways you end up with the same thing. A clove of garlic whose skin has been loosened. You can pull the skin off of that. And now we are going to mince up our cloves of garlic. So I've got my fingers in the brace position. I'm holding my knife in my handy dandy knife pose, which is thumb on one side, pointer finger on the other side, and the rest of the knife is being held with my fingers here. And this gives me all the control in the world I need to chop up my garlic. So I've got my nice brace happening, and I'm mincing. So now I've got some decent sized chunks of garlic. I'm going to get them a little smaller. So I'm going to put my fingers on the top end of the knife. Still got my hand in the same position, and I'm kind of keeping the bottom part of the knife here, making contact with the cutting board, and I'm pushing down and I'm kind of rocking. Feel free to get your parents to help you with this part. It's hard to do this with a small knife, I'll be totally honest with you. You get a much better or quicker kind of result if you're using a big knife, which is nothing to be scared of. It takes a little while to get comfortable using, but a big knife is often safer to use than a really little knife because it's actually going to give you control. So we've got some nice minced garlic here, and I'm going to pop it into one of my fancy little dishes. And there we go. So you can use the flat side of your knife. You don't want to scrape with your knife too much on the cutting board because it will dull your knife, but you can kind of scoop like this, almost like if you were like plowing the snow, rather than, you don't want to scrape like this. But I've got my garlic like that. I've got a lemon here that I'm going to juice. So I'm going to cut this guy in half, and I've got a nice little lemon reamer or juicer, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to just juice that. I love the smell of fresh lemon. So zingy and fresh. Okay, so we've got the juice of a lemon, and we've got a lemon, we've got a garlic, we've got a little bit of butter, which we're going to be using in our sauce, and we've got some pepper. I like chili flakes, so I'm going to use a little chili flakes. If you guys have some at home and you like those, feel free to put those in there. No pressure at all. You could just do garlic, or you could just do butter if that's what you're feeling, but the garlic, the butter, the lemon, the chili flakes, they go really nicely together. Okay, so I'm going to bring these over to the stove, and I'll be right back to grab the rest. So I'm putting those kind of on the counter beside the stove, which happens to be another stove, but it isn't on. And I've got a pot of boiling water that I got going a little while ago, and I added some salt to that, and the Italians say you want to salt your water to the same saltiness of the sea. So that's pretty salty, but you want to do a nice big pinch in there. And we are going to be adding our little guys into the water. So you don't want to drop them from too high of a height because they'll splash back and hurt you. Oops, with some burning water there. So we're going to plop these guys in. I'm going to just go like this and do a little dump. And quite quickly you want to be stirring the pot so that they don't stick to the bottom. Got our little gnocchis. And the fun thing about doing fresh pasta is that it tells you when it's done. You don't have to test it. It floats to the surface when it's all ready to go. So this is getting pretty, we're in some risky territory here with me putting my fingers so close to the water. Feel free to get your parents to help you get the gnocchis in there, or you could just sort of dump them right in and not have your hands involved. So I've got a nice little spoon here and I'm just going to stir them, and this is going to help us avoid them sticking to the bottom. That's an important step whenever you're making pasta. So they're going to return to the boil because they cooled the water down when I added them there. And once they're back up to a boil, they take just a couple of minutes, and then slowly you'll see these nice little gnocchis rising to the surface. And I'll show you what the next step is then. Okay, so you can see here we've got the little gnocchis. They're coming up, and I've got here a really great tool, which is a slotted spoon. You could absolutely wait for them to all rise and then strain them in a colander in your kitchen sink. But I find this to be pretty handy. We can scoop them all out here. And I'm just putting them all into a bowl before we add them to our pan for the sauce in a minute. Beautiful. Oops. They're sort of funny looking guys, eh? Here we go. Beautiful. Oh, there's one guy stuck to the bottom. Ah, I got him, he's floating. Okay, perfect. Feel free to use your spoon and loosen. You might need to do that because sometimes even if you stir and try to get them not stuck to the bottom, you still end up with one little guy stuck to the bottom. So I'm just going to pop this over here, and we will get our quick sauce going. So I'm going to turn this to sort of a medium-high heat, and when you're cooking in your kitchen, you want to make sure that you put the pot handles in so that when people walk by, they're not going to bonk into the handles. That's just like a really easy way to lose some of your dinner or potentially really hurt somebody. So I'm adding about, the recipe calls for 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm not going to add all of it because I didn't make all of the gnocchis for this little video that I'm showing for you guys. So we're going to melt our butter, which is going to take a second. And as soon as the butter is melted, it's going to start foaming shortly after it's melted. You don't really want to let it get cooked into sort of past the foaming stage, because then the butter is going to take on a different flavor. So, wow, there's nothing better, eh? So I've got our garlic here. I'm going to add that in a second when this butter's all melted. And then we will be adding the rest of our gnocchi to the pan. So you could have been getting this part going sort of just before you boiled your gnocchis. That way you can add the gnocchi from the pan directly, or the pot of boiling water directly into the saucepan. There's some different sort of approaches you can take. So this is what I told you about, the butter kind of starts foaming a little bit. And now we're going to add our garlic. And I'm sure you've smelled this before, or I hope you have. If you haven't, you're in luck. The smell of butter and garlic cooking is one of the best smells in the world. So we're gonna let this cook just for less than a minute, because if we cook it more than a minute, the garlic will start to brown, and again, like the butter, they take on a really different flavor. So you just want the garlic to lightly cook here. Oh, that's looking really nice. So this is like a very simple way of making a pasta sauce, but it is delicious. So now I'm going to add our gnocchis to the pan. And it's okay if a little bit of water comes along with them. That's actually a good thing. The water that you cook pasta in does not always need to be thrown away. It actually has something called starch in it, and it helps kind of make a glossy sauce. I think that the starch water that you cook pasta in is very underrated and very delicious. So we've got our garlicky buttery noodles. I'm going to be right back with some parm and some lemon. So again, like I did with the butter, I'm only going to add a kind of half of what I've told you to add, because I just am making a slightly smaller version today. And we're going to add some of the parm, the fresh grated parm. And I'm going to do a pinch of pepper. This is totally up to you, kind of how this next part goes. If you had some vegetables in the fridge and you love vegetables, you could add some kale or spinach or mushrooms to this, and it would be delightful. This is sort of a choose your own adventure sauce. The way that it is right now is, when I was a kid, was like one of my favorite ways to eat pasta in the world. So I'm just going to let this go for a minute longer so it gets nice and coated. And we're almost there. So we kind of basically have a little cream sauce happening. And that kind of creaminess actually comes from the starch on the noodle water that I told you about, and the gnocchi water. Okay, that's looking really nice. I'm going to turn this off. And we'll pop that there. And here we go. We have beautiful butternut squash gnocchi. I hope that you all enjoy. I'm so excited about this pasta. Locally grown butternut squashes. You guys are so lucky. I hope you have fun making this. We'll see you soon.